WCR, by the way, 89.9 FM, where all
Okay.
good things happen.
All right.
And this is and listening to Lauren Schoenberg and Mel Lewis. Mel Lewis talking right now, too much as usual, but that's what I'm here for. I only got a few hours.
No,
All right.
you're not talking too much.
Okay, so now Buddy forms this new band, which when I heard this first of record on Pacific Jazz Records,
Right. With a psychedelic cover, right?
yeah,
Isn't that like-
and it was live,
Right.
and I said he is back, and he from then on, I think he became more phenomenal than ever as a drummer, as a person. He changed. Oh, he had his moments again as a leader, like we were talking about earlier. But I knew him better, and I, being a band leader myself, I knew what some of his problems were, because he wasn't wrong about a lot of the things he said or did.
Mhm.
There's a lot of there was some bad talk on him about the way he treated some of the musicians he treated. I mean, certain ways. But I know a lot of those guys that they deserved it.
Mhm.
I mean, they were not for the band. They needed to be kicked. They wouldn't have lasted 2 seconds in Dorsey's band or Benny Goodman's band or frankly any band in the old days at all. And but the Buddy Rich that we know today and that became the star he became started with this band now that we're going to hear, and I think he reached his peak and never peaked. I mean, he just kept going more and more and more. There was never a letdown. He never slid down. He never slowed down.
Yeah.
I think he just got better and better and better from then on until the day we lost him.
Yeah.
Then he was playing his butt off when that happened.
Well, that's what we're going to hear. We're going to hear one of the very last recordings he made. This is 1985,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a full-blown version of his famous West Side Story arrangement. And he's just mind-boggling on here.
Well, I have a tape. That before we started,
Yeah, sure.
I heard him on a show in England. I have the tape of it. It's a Parkinson show that he did in England, and it was short. It was the last gig the band worked before they came. While they were at Ronnie Scott's, but it was the last TV show he ever did.
Mm.
It was an interview, and then he sat down behind the drums, and I'll tell you something. I never heard him ever. I thought it was some of the greatest drumming I had ever heard in my life from him, that night, not knowing that would probably be one of his very last performances in his life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, fantastic. I'll have to bring it on the show someday,
Yeah.
and we'll play it.
Well, before we get into this long version of West Side Story, I'd like to ask you, what should I listen for? What should the listener listen for the if you have a prejudice in your mind about Buddy Rich, when he's going to do the famous slowing down snare drum solo and all that, what do you listen for, and what did he do that was so phenomenal? I mean, can you put it in, or just direct us to what?
Well, like you say, the
what to
famous
listen
slowing
for.
down,
Right.
the famous slowing down snare drum solo.
Right.
Who else could do that?
Right.
To slow down like that and then pick it up to such a tremendous speed. All he was really doing was showing you what he's going to do so fast that you won't believe it.
Right.
He just slowed down to show you what he's going to do.
Single stroke roll.
Single stroke roll. So what you were really hearing is, okay, I'm going to show you what this actually is, because when I start doing this at my top speed, you'll know what it is,
Right.
and you'll realize how hard it is,
Right.
and how phenomenal I am,
Yeah.
and how wonderful. I keep using the word phenomenal, but that fits
Yeah.
him. But the point is, it's actually what it is. He's showing you the most simplified version of what he's going to be finally doing so ridiculously fast that nobody else in the world, I don't think, could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, I mean, if you're a layman, you realize, my God, you realize how fast he's playing now? I mean,
Yeah.
he was just doing that slow, and that's what he's doing now at that speed?
Yeah.
That's showbiz.
How about also the what he does when the band's playing? And you said something once. I
Well-
remember you said to me, "Why, Buddy could make a band shine." I remember you said that. And how about his playing when the band was playing?
he knew every note, every figure in that arrangement. And he's actually, see, the difference between him and me is like day and night when it comes to that. See,
Right.
I also know everything that's going on. I'm just as good at that as he was. The difference is that I I would only boost certain parts that I knew needed boosting, and I would play in the in between. Uh, I would I would fill up what where nothing was going on. He would actually play the melody along with them.
Right.
I mean, he knew it that well, and he made them, which made them play it the way he was playing it.
Right.
That's where I disagreed with him on that point, because he forced the music to be played like a drummer. See, whereas my bit is to play it the way they're playing
Like the
it.
band plays.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now that's where he and I are opposites in big band playing.
Yeah.
But actually, behind it, we both have the same talent for hearing, you know. And this is what he liked about me, and that's what I liked about him. I mean, in other words, what we liked about each other was the things that neither one of us could do. You know, it was respect for the other each other's signature.
Yeah. Well, so what struck me was over the years how highly, of course, you've always spoken about Buddy, and it's obvious now from what we're hearing about how much you know about him and what he played, and also all the interviews where they would ask Buddy about his favorite drummers, and Mel Lewis, his name was always there, and he was always saying that people should be listening to you and all that, and that you're the best big band drummer and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was so amazing that with this real opposite conceptions on some points,
Yeah.
but yet you had this mutual respect and understanding for each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was always there for many, many years, and I really felt terrible. I mean, it really hurt me when he died, because I didn't expect that. I mean,
Yeah.
not at all. I thought he was going to come through, but I used to talk, and tell him, hey, listen, we're going to meet I'll meet you at Gray's, because we used to go over. I walked from 75th, he'd walk from 66th there, or what, 63rd. We'd meet at the hot dog joint on Broadway in
Oh,
72nd.
sure, the Papaya joint.
Yeah, and then we just walk around a little bit for a while, and we always had a lot of fun together. But musically, we were opposites.
Yeah.
I mean, really. But that's what we dug about each other. Because Buddy didn't like people that played like him or copied him. He couldn't
Buddy
stand
Rich
that.
imitators.
Yeah,
Right.
And I never had that problem too much, because there not many people understand what I'm doing. See, Buddy's more understandable.
More
because,
accessible.
Yeah, because he really plays the drums. He's
Right.
probably the greatest drummer that ever lived. I mean, he played the hell out of the drums. And if you know how to play the drums, then you could do what he did, but just not the way he did, or as good as he did. And, of course, you had to have his mind,
Right.
which you can't have.
Right.
And that was the difference. So he hated drummers who would listen to his records and spend 8 hours a day copying what they heard on the records, and then keep using that material over and over again, whereas he never repeated it. And if he did, it would be in a different context.
Right.
I mean, we all repeat. You have your thing,
Right.
and you don't get away from that, but it's how you use it and when you use it. And only you will know how, only you can do that.
Right.
The individual, we all have that's how you get a style. That's your signature. But, I'm not going to name names, but there are some drummers who have made names using Buddy Rich licks that they practiced.
Even looking like him.
Oh, they try to look like him. They try everything.
The whole thing. Yeah.
And to me, that's stupid. I mean, it's not even smart.
Yeah.
And you have to find yourself.
Yeah.
You can be influenced by him, but my God, to spend 8 hours a day trying to do what he did. What he did once is what you're doing. If you hear it on a record, he did it one time.
Yeah.
Now you're trying to find out how to do it all the time. That's wrong.
It's exactly 45 seconds before the hour of 7 o'clock, and this is exactly 89.9 on your FM dial. WKCR FM in New York, and we're coming to you in stereo. My name is Lauren Schoenberg, and it's an honor to be here with Mel Lewis, hearing him talk about great jazz drummers. And we're talking about Buddy Rich. This is part 4 in a continuing series that we did first about 6 years or so ago, maybe 7 years ago, and where we did the history of jazz drums, and we had so many requests to repeat it instead of just rebroadcasting the old ones. We figured, why not just do it again updated and better, and that's what we're doing, and we're taking our time, and we have plenty of time. So tonight it'll be Buddy Rich, Kenny Clark, and Max Roach. Right now we're going to hear our last Buddy Rich item, and it's a long one. It's a 15-minute showcase for Buddy and the band. This is from 1985. I think this is in London, and it's live, of course, and it's the West Side Story.
Okay.
Sweet, I guess, or whatever. Yeah. of course, that was the very famous West Side Story.
That was a great solo. It was really a fantastic solo.
Yeah,
You know, it's he covered everything there. You know.
so imaginative.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny. You know, we got a call while that was on from a guy by name of he called himself Joe, and he called directly to put me down for giving faint praise. He
Damning
said,
with faint praise.
damning with faint praise, whatever he said. I don't know. And because I made a statement earlier, I guess about the fact that about when Buddy had that band, I guess the band that he had back in the '40s, about him not being able to play like Max Roach.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I stand behind what I said. In the first place, Buddy wouldn't want to play like Max Roach because Max Roach plays like Max Roach. Max Roach does not play like Buddy Rich. That's why these guys are so great. They all have their own signature. And at that time, Buddy was a swing drummer, and just like Sid Catlett and all those guys in those days, hadn't really gotten into playing bebop, as we call it. It's another style of playing, of which Max was, along with Kenny Clark, but I think Max, which we'll get around to very shortly,
Yeah.
was the king, you know. And that wasn't Buddy's style. He didn't play that way at all. He could, and he didn't try. And it was smart. Anybody that you don't try and do something you can't do. And when I mean can't do, I mean can't do because it ain't you. And all I ended up was a big fight on the phone with this guy where we both cursed each other out and I hung up on him. I'm sorry I did that. If you're listening, I don't like to do that. But you were wrong, because you didn't think you don't know enough about it. You think you do, but you don't. These great drummers we're playing are drummers who have their own signature, which means they play only like themselves. They don't play like anybody else. And it's not even a matter of whether they can or they can't. It's a matter that they don't. And they shouldn't. Because what each one has to offer is so special. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But in some cases, they can't. You know. Why try and be what you're not, especially when you got something so good in the first place? What does Buddy Rich have to play like Max Roach for anyway? He doesn't have to. Max Roach doesn't have to play like Buddy Rich. He doesn't have to. I don't have to play like either one of them. I don't have to. But maybe you do. You know.
Yeah.
Maybe you got to play like all of us if you can. You know, but you're wrong.
Yeah,
Buddy Rich is, I love him, and he was one of my dearest friends, and I know what he could do, and I know why he couldn't do certain things, and I know why I can't do certain things. Do you understand? I'm telling you on the air. And that'll answer maybe some other people's questions, too, that would make the same kind of a phone call.
Yeah, I
You
don't
have
think,
to understand we are talking about about what made these individuals great in their own right.
That's right.
You know. Now, if you understand that, maybe you'll sit back and relax and don't, have a beer and just enjoy the rest of the program. We're
Yeah.
going to get on to Max Roach very shortly, who is
Yeah.
not Buddy Rich. He's Max Roach. Thank God. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Thank you, Mel, for setting that guy straight. That really was way out of line. I mean, I can't understand it. I mean,
Well, I mean,
we both have gotten, I have gotten for you so much positive response to these shows, and
Well,
what
I'm
we're doing
going
is
to say
just
something
ludicrous.
once in a while that I don't
Yeah.
expect everybody to agree with
Sure, of
everything I
course
say.
not.
I mean, that's ridiculous. They don't have to. But the point is that I didn't say what he thinks I said.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the point.
It's 7:19, and we're going to carry on right now. Before we go to Kenny Clark, we have a recording of Buddy Rich and Max Roach, which we'll play when we get to Max Roach. And in the same way, I have a recording of Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa. And we got into Gene Krupa a couple of shows ago. And I think it just might be instructive just to listen to a very short 3-minute drum battle between Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. Let's just listen to this. All right, a little bit of showmanship there.
Yeah, that was fun. Um,
Now, it's been written, I've read it actually in liner notes, people taking Buddy to task for the drum battles with Gene at Jazz at the Philharmonic in the 50s for disrespecting him or showing him up on the stage. I mean, I've read it in print, and that means that a lot of people read it who don't know and will carry that thought. What do you say to that?
well, I'll tell you something. Buddy told me the story of the first time he and Gene were called on a stage to do this with Jazz at the Philharmonic. Now, at the time, because of hype and press agents and this and that and media and this big thing about who's number one and the number one drummer and
Number one.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Slingerland Drum Company always called Gene Krupa the king of the drums, the number one drummer of the world.
Right.
And by this time, Buddy had left them. He was with Ludwig, and Ludwig wants to call Buddy the number one drummer. In other words, they got this same thing. Even the photographs were the same. They looked the same poses and all that. Well, Buddy said finally Norman Granz decided to have the drum battle. Because it would be a big seller on the stage. Just like the things with Lester and Flip Phillips and all that, Illinois Jacquet, and they get out there and start honking away. And who could honk louder or faster or whatever. So, if you hear any funny noises, I'm licking on a piece of butterscotch, folks. So, the way Buddy said, he got to the theater, and Gene was already there and was already set up and everything. And he walked in, and he saw Gene when he went. They said hi to each other from a distance, And he says, we really weren't that friendly at the time. I mean, we were friendly. He says, but and he said, and I always respected him. He says, but this thing was going on, And all of a sudden, Gene's wife Ethel walked over to him and said, "Well, now we'll find out who is the number one drummer."
Wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and he said, "What? Like what brought that on?" He couldn't believe that anybody would come up to him like Gene did. I don't think Gene knew she said that, but she did. So Buddy said, well, this is going to be one of those scenes, And of course now he realized there's going to be a real battle of the drums out there. So eventually Gene. He says, I let Gene run the show because, he was older and been around more, and I thought he was number one. He says, I wanted to be, but I thought he was, And he came over to me finally, and he says, all right, buddy, here's what we'll do when we go out there later. He says, we'll each have our group to play with. He says, I'll do my bit, and then you do yours, and then the groups will leave. And there'll be just the two sets of drums out there on the stage. He says, no. He says, we'll just play back and forth a little bit. We'll start off with, we'll play some a medium tempo thing, play some blues or something with the drums. And then I'll play a long solo, I said, no, we'll do some 8s and 4, some 12s and some 4s, And then I'll do a long solo. And then I'll stop, and then you do a long solo. And then, I'll join you at the end of your solo, and we'll go into a bop, 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 bop. We'll end, something like that. Buddy said, okay. Okay, so that's what happened. Gene went out and played with his group. He played a couple of tunes or a tune or whatever. And then Buddy played probably the same group, or else they might have divided the groups up a little bit, because there was all these Roy Eldridge, and Flip, and like I said, those guys, and Charlie Parker, everybody. So now they start the drum battle, and they started out cha da ka ta da ka ta da ka da ka, and of course the audience is screaming and they waiting for this big thing. So Buddy said, I was really prepared to keep it like simple and have some fun, and so he says, Gene, we started and we did some 12s, and then we did some 4s, and in fact we did some 2s, he said. And then all of a sudden, Gene says, all right, I got it. And he says, and the lights went out, and these spotlights that Gene had facing went up.
No.
and here's these shadows up in the sky behind him,
Yeah.
and I said, well, wait a minute now.
Yeah.
And a big show business solo started at that moment.
Yeah.
And Buddy said he wasn't prepared for that. He said, I never saw him do that. He said, I saw him do it later on, but he said, but I never saw that bit with the lights. I said, when he was telling me, I said, I saw it when I was a little kid. He did that with his big band. He says, yeah, but I never saw it. I didn't know he was going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that had the people going nuts immediately when they saw that, That started it right off. It didn't matter what he played because it looked great,
Yeah.
It was fantastic. So he says, he finally, all of a sudden, he stops. He finishes and points to me, and his lights go off, and the spotlight goes on me, just a regular spotlight, and I started. And I thought, okay, I got to top you. I'm sorry. So he says, I started out at the tempo he just finished, medium. He says, and I started building, and then I doubled, and I tripled.
Oh, no.
He says, and while I was tripling and tearing the house apart, at that point, Gene dropped a drumstick or two. He just dropped his sticks, bent down behind his big bass drum, and yelled up from down below so the people wouldn't know. They thought he was picking up his sticks or something,
Right.
and he's yelling at me, for gosh sakes, bring the tempo back down again. He said, I can't play that fast. I can't, I can't make it, And Buddy heard him, He's yelling, don't make me, I can't join you there. I mean, I can't do it. In other words,
Right.
And Buddy started slowing down till he got down back to an easy tempo, and then Gene joined him, and they went out.
Wow.
And he said, and from that time on, they became the closest of friends, and nobody cared or thought anything about number one. They just became very good friends from that day on. I said, well, that's great, because I always thought you were. He says, no, but that's how it was, and that's how it became.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's the true story. Okay.
Well, that was Buddy told me that
Yeah.
story. I mean, I didn't read it anywhere. He told me personally.
It's 7:31. That's Mel Lewis. My name's Lauren Schoenberg. This is the History of Jazz Drums, a series of shows we're bringing you on WKCR. We'll be picking it up next Tuesday from noon to 3 for Part 5. This is Part 4. And we've now finished with Buddy Rich, and we're now going to shift to Kenny Clarke. And really from now on, we'll be dealing with drummers, with a few exceptions, who are what we would call in the school of modern jazz drummers. It really began with Kenny Clarke. And some people say, I mean, you could debate it till you're blue in the face. They say Max Roach is the father of modern jazz of modern jazz drumming, and Kenny Clarke is the grandfather. I mean, you can take it back to Sid Catlett or Joe Jones or Baby Dodds, but let's begin. Let's begin with Kenny Clarke. His name was Kenneth Spearman Clarke, and we're going to listen now to a fascinating recording that was made at Minton's Playhouse in 1941 that wasn't issued until after 40 years after it was recorded. And this is the house band of Thelonious Monk on piano, Nick Fenton on bass, and Kenny Clarke on drums. And there's a jam session with two trumpet players. The two trumpet players are Joe Guy and Roy Eldridge, and they do Indiana, and you can really hear Kenny Clarke well. And I think it's worth remarking that according to John Lewis, who was a lifelong friend of Kenny Clarke's, at this time Kenny had really started to sew up a lot of the major work here in New York. He was born, I think, about 1914 or so.
Something like that.
He was He was an older generation than even Blakey, and by far Max and the rest of them. And he had played in Edgar Hayes's band and a lot of the other bands around New York, and he had recorded with the Basie Band in 1941, and was a leader and all that kind of stuff. So he really had quite a reputation and would have been one of the major drummers if he hadn't been drafted.
He played vibes too, and
That's
all
right.
that.
That's right. He's
Piano,
on vibes on a bunch of Edgar
did some
Hayes
writing,
records.
yeah.
In fact, we're going to hear one of his tunes later. And John Lewis attributes to what happened was that he got drafted. He didn't want to play drums, so he played trombone and different instruments in the Army. And when he came back to New York, and he hadn't played in several years, and he had to evolve a little bit of a different style because he had not played for several years and adapted and found a different way to play. But the way he plays here is a little bit different than the way he played later. So what we're going to do right now is kind of peek into the actual birth of bebop up at Minton's Playhouse. And you'll hear the birth of bebop drums on these recordings. This is the first time that a lot of people heard this approach to the drums was up at Mittens. And this is Kenny Clark, again with Thelonious Monk, Roy Eldridge, Joe Guy, and Nick Fenton on Indiana.